Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Welcome into the GSMC Basketball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brice Lewis, and today we're going to talk more basketball with you, starting off with the Christmas Day games, Lakers and Clippers, which is the biggest game of all the Christmas Day games, and the other Christmas Day games, plus some news and notes around the league and some big college basketball matchups coming later in the show. But we're going to start with the Lakers and Clippers, as the Clippers win again for the second straight game that they've played this year, and now go 2-0 in the season series. Kawhi Leonard had 37 points in this game. LeBron and AD both had 24 and 23. And based off when I watched this game, I saw some things that were concerning for the Lakers and very encouraging for the Clippers. LeBron James re-injured his groin earlier in the game, trying to take a charge from Patrick Beverley, I believe it was. And he was kneed close to the groin, which re-injured the groin, which might have had some contribution into why his performance maybe wasn't as great as it usually is. But, you know, LeBron still played the game. He still came out there as a warrior and played well. The Clippers in this game, when I saw it, they really just outplayed the Lakers after the first half. First half, the Lakers made a little run at the end to get a little 12-point lead going into halftime. And then by the end of the third quarter, they were a tie game. And then the Clippers have shown in both games that in the fourth quarter, they have been the more clutch and more prepared team, which I think is big because it makes a difference in regards to the fact that the Lakers so far have not proved to be the best LA team so far. It's been the Clippers. The Clippers have done a lot of good things well. They play great defensively. If you look at the end of the game, Patrick Beverley got a stop on LeBron James, turning the ball over to give it back to the Clippers to basically seal the game, but they were already up by 3 at that point. And also, they made better shots. And this is a game also where Paul George didn't really play that well. But we could also sit here and say LeBron and AD didn't play as dominant as they could have played. Really, Kawhi was the star of this game. Kyle Kuzma was hot in the first half, though. So Kyle Kuzma did give him the much-needed baskets in the first half. And I think that just shows the talent and the come-up of Kyle Kuzma. Because remember, Kyle Kuzma's been hurt most of the season. So he's been trying to get his whips about him, trying to get back in a better shape, and just trying to get back to being the third scoring option that everybody expected him to be on the Lakers this year. Now, this game, to me, when I watched it, I feel like the Clippers right now, I feel like the Clippers have an identity. They know who they are. They know what they want to do, and they know how they want to play and how they want to beat you. They know that their strengths are more defensively perimeter, and also they have more shooters. And they just know the strengths of everybody, that what they can do. Kawhi was hot to start in the first half, which I think gave him a big boost. I think the weaknesses and strengths of both teams, the Lakers have the advantage in the big men, but on the perimeter, that's where the Clippers have the advantage. And I think the Clippers really exploited this game, especially in the second half. I believe that, both teams have came out there and they're trying to show something. Obviously, you downplay in the regular season because of the regular season, you don't want to make a game sound too big. But it's clear that in these games, these teams take it very seriously, especially the Clippers. The Clippers know they're the little brother of the Lakers, and they need to make a statement if they're going to make a run in the playoffs. Because remember, this is the team, again, that they expect to have to go through to beat, to get to the NBA Finals. And if that's the case, they know they need to be shooting on all cylinders at all times. And, it's one of those things where when you watch this game, both teams clearly look like the two best teams, in my opinion, in the Western Conference. And a 7-game series between these two teams looks like it's going to be a fun ride. It's going to be enjoyable. You're going to love every second of it. And it's going to probably be one of the best series we've had in a long time in the NBA. I think that both teams have a lot that they can work on, though. And that's the scary part of both these teams. Both of these teams can improve dramatically. Both of these teams can improve tremendously. And it's one of those things where I think you kind of have to look at it in a way of this, where if you realistically think about it, the Clippers right now, there is a reason why everybody kind of predicted the Clippers to be the team to win the championship this year, because they were adding star players to a team that already knew what they were. The Lakers are putting a lot of pieces together trying to figure out what they were. Now, it doesn't help that LeBron has not been fully healthy. Anthony Davis was a little banged up. And they didn't look, like I said, as dominant as they've usually looked in previous games. But I think that when the playoffs come around and both teams get healthy, they'll be ready when it's time. They'll be ready to do what they have to do to win. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the regular season. It's about the playoffs for both of these teams. It's clear. You can, like I said, you can tell that with the way the Clippers play. The Clippers play like a team that they kind of just are like, we're just trying to get through the regular season. We really don't care what type of seed we get, because we know we're better than almost every team in the Western Conference. And we can beat you even if you have home court, or if we have home court. And, obviously I think the Lakers care more because I think they're the number one seed. I think the Lakers, they're on a 4-game losing streak after this loss tonight. So they're trying to figure some things out because they're losing some games right now. And they're trying to maybe keep the home court maybe over the Clippers. That's something I think that a lot of people don't talk about. The Lakers may want home court in the playoffs, knowing that this matchup is looming. And so I think that's something that definitely is something that you have to look into, because I think the Lakers know it would be more beneficial for them, even though it's not necessarily for the Clippers in my opinion, but more importantly for everybody else. Because remember, since both teams are in LA, it really doesn't matter who has home court advantage, so to say, by record. Because at the end of the day, whoever buys most tickets, which either they're going to be Clipper fans or Laker fans, that's going to be who has home court. That's just as simple. And you probably have a lot of fans that come to these games and probably are just like, hey, I just want to see some good basketball between two of the best LA teams that we've had here in a while at the same time. You thought LA and Lakers were intense when Chris Paul and Lob City was here with Kobe. These two teams now, you can tell it's very serious. It's very deep. Both teams are trying to reach something that they haven't reached in a long time. The Lakers haven't won a championship since, I believe, 2011. And the Clippers haven't won one, I don't think, ever in their franchise history, I don't believe. So so both teams are both working for something. Both teams are both looking for something. Both teams both want something. And I think that's going to be what's very important for both teams at the end of the day. Again, Kawhi in both games has looked like the best player on the court, even with LeBron and AD, which I think I'm going to talk about more in detail later in the show, about kind of the rivalry between LeBron and Kawhi Leonard. But Kawhi's like the most dominant player on the floor. He's looked the most efficient. Kawhi, honestly, when you watch him play, he has a very smooth game. He has a very nonchalant game. It's not a game that's too Kyrie Irving-like, where it's just like flashy, but it's like a smooth operator type of game where, he gets to his spot, he makes the shot every time he gets to his spot. And that's why Kawhi, he's one of the best players in the league. And that's why some people think he's coming for the throne of not just being the best team in LA, but being the best player in LA and being the best player in the league. And it's one of those things that I think is going to really look very interesting going into future seasons, as the Clippers are here to stay for a good while. And like I said, right now they're up 2-0 in the season series on the Lakers. And the Lakers right now have to figure out what are they going to do to beat this team. The regular season, the good thing about the regular season, it gives you a chance to kind of look at what you need to improve, look at what would be best, and look at what would be most effective against these two teams. If you watch this game, Kawhi was guarding LeBron a lot. Usually in regular season matchups, you don't see that. Usually they try to keep the best players off of each other just because it's like, again, it's regular season, it's not as important, but in the playoffs, we're going to put them on you. But no, in this game, they had Kawhi guarding LeBron James. They had their best defenders on their best players and vice versa for both teams. And that kind of just showed you how serious they take this game, how serious both teams took the game. I think both teams really, they have improvements, but they also look like the two most best teams in the Western Conference. And I think that this game's just another game. Great plays by both teams. Just Clippers made more plays down the stretch, which resulted in the victory for them. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the future between these two teams because they've all played well. Everybody's played well to get to this point. And, both teams are just going to get better. And in the Western Conference, the only team that some people may think that can compete with the teams is Houston. And we'll talk about them next segment in the disappointment that happened today on Christmas. But I think that this game is just another great game for the Clippers, another great team win, and another building block. Because right now they can maybe say at this point in the season we feel like we're better than the Lakers right now, and we want to remain better than the Lakers going forward into the playoffs. But coming up next, we're going to talk about the rest of the Christmas Day games, the results, what happened, my thoughts and opinions coming right up here.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the Lakers and Clippers Christmas game because that was the biggest game of all the Christmas games. I broke down my thoughts on that game, what happened between LeBron and Kawhi, and some things going into the season that maybe both teams can take out of it. Some weaknesses and some concerns for the Lakers and some positives for the Clippers because, both teams are kind of at this point in the season still trying to learn each other and still trying to get better throughout the year. So you don't want to take too much from these games. You don't want to sit here as a fan and think, oh, it's over for my team because we lost against the Clippers. Just take this as another stepping stone. It's still early season. We just got done with the first quarter of the season and let's look forward to the future. But now we're going to talk about the other basketball games that happened tonight. We're going to start with Celtics and Raptors. Celtics won 118-102 over the Raptors. And in Toronto, Jaylen Brown was the leading scorer with 30, youngest player in Christmas history too to score 30 points. Jaylen Brown was the youngest. Watching this game, Boston just came out and played like the better team. Now, the Raptors had a quick 10-0 run to start the game, but after that, it was all Boston. The Raptors were coming into this game very short-handed. They didn't have Siakam, who's out with a groin. They didn't have Marc Gasol. I believe they didn't have another player. And basically, they came into this game just undermanned at a lot of points in the game. You kind of saw it. They just didn't have enough firepower to beat the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics have looked really good this year. Kemba Walker has really just ingratiated himself into this team very well. And Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have played well. Last year they weren't looking like the same players we thought from that first year when they made that late playoff run. But now they're looking like those players again, and they're playing great basketball. And the Boston Celtics are a team that could really cause some chaos in the playoffs because they have some guys. And the thing is, everybody knows their role. Everybody knows what they need to do, and everybody knows how to play together. And that's one of the most important things throughout the season you want to build is the ability to know how to play together, the ability to know how to work together. Because team chemistry is one of the most important things you can have. You want to make sure that you know how to play with each other when it comes to certain opponents. Raptors, when they get healthy, are not going to be a slouch. I think the Raptors, when they get healthy, are obviously a team to also be reckoned with. Because Siakam's the best player they have. And he's been averaging 25 points a game this year. He's literally on an all-star level this year. He's played great basketball. And everything tells you that the Raptors are going to be in the picture because they're the defending champions. You got to put respect on their name. They are the defending champions. They are one of the best teams in the NBA, to me, in my opinion, because they're very well coached by Nick Nurse. And I think that when they get healthy, they'll be ready to go. But the Boston Celtics won this game tonight. They came out, they outplayed them, basically. They outplayed them. They beat them, and they did what they need to do to be successful at the end of the day. And congratulations to the Boston Celtics for a big win, because also Boston snapped an 8-game losing streak in Toronto. The last 8 times that Boston's been in Toronto, they've lost. So that's a big snap breaker for the Boston Celtics. Next game, 76ers and Bucks. 76ers won 121 to 109. Embiid was very dominant in this game. Embiid was probably the best player on the floor in this game. Okay, Embiid had 31 points and 11 rebounds in just 28 minutes, but nonetheless, he had more points than he played minutes. And he was just dominant all over the defensive end. He was dominant on the boards. He was dominant in the paint, and they really shut down Giannis. Giannis only had 18 points in this game. He had 14 rebounds, a double-double, and 7 assists, but he was 8 from 27 from the field. That was not very efficient, and 0 from 7 from the three-point line. This was a game where Chris Middleton really had to carry this team. He had 31 tonight, but usually you would rather have Chris Middleton having 31 than Giannis having 31 because we feel like the impacts of those scores are different. Watching this game, really, the 76ers are probably one of the best matchups for the Milwaukee Bucks because they have length all over the floor. Giannis is not bigger than anybody against the 76ers. That's how the Raptors beat him. Kawhi locked them up because Kawhi is just as big and strong as Giannis, and he locked them up. Plus, they have those guys like Ibaka and Gasol he had to run into in the paint, and that wasn't making it easy. And really, the 76ers are built the same way. That's why it's extremely important for the Bucks to be able to shoot, and Giannis be able to shoot the jumper or the three. He doesn't even have to shoot a three if he can get a mid-range, because if they lock down the paint, but he can pull up and make the mid-range, it won't matter. And right now, he's been struggling to hit the mid-range shot. I think that's what's keeping him from being as successful as he could be. I think that, things can change if he can improve that throughout the season. And the 76ers took advantage of that night. And they played a great game. Josh Richardson had one of his best games for the 76ers this year on Christmas night. And right now, based off this game, if you were trying to look at this game and gain anything out of this game, right now, we take the 76ers are the best team in the East right now. Because remember, they're still trying to figure it out, including 2 new starters into their lineup, where the Bucks are pretty much bringing everybody back except some new bench pieces and Michael Brogdon not being in the starting lineup. They had Dante DiVincenzo starting at point today, obviously without Eric Bledsoe, who's out with injury right now. But so we can also look at the fact that the Bucks were not full strength today, and maybe you can make an excuse for them. But in this game, flat out 76ers beat them from start to finish. They completely outplayed the Milwaukee Bucks tonight, and congratulations to the 76ers because this was definitely a statement win. A statement when they wanted to make a statement to the league, like, hey, we're here. And don't think any less of us because we're going to be there. We think that we're the best team in the East. We think we're going to make it to the NBA Finals, and we think we'll beat anybody who comes out of the Western Conference. Because the 76ers, from a defensive standpoint, one of the best defensive teams in the league. And if Ben Simmons can get some points in the playoffs and Embiid can be dominant, why not? Why couldn't they make it? But in other scores, the upset of the day, Warriors beat the Rockets 116 to 104. This was a very big game. Also, the Warriors won 3 in a row. Houston really disappointing tonight. They did not play one of their better games. Harden struggled early in the game. And Russell Westbrook was very inefficient. He had one of those nights where he had 31, but he was very inefficient. I believe he was 8 for 27 from the floor. I believe. He did not have a great game tonight. The Golden State Warriors, this is a team that people thought the season was over because they lost Curry, they lost Clay, and they thought this team was tanking. And the team, from a talent perspective, is depleted of talent from what they had. But they still play hard. They still play hard into Steve Kerr. Great job to Steve Kerr and the coaching staff for getting these guys ready to play. And they really came out there and they played a great game. And they executed the game plan on James Harden and Russell Westbrook that worked. And that was what was able to help them win. In this game, the key was that in the first half, James Harden was getting to the free throw line. Second half, James Harden could not get to the free throw line. And that's what, to me, made the difference in the game because you got to stop James Harden from getting those easy buckets. And the Warriors did, and they got some big performances. Alec Burks, Draymond Green had a career high in points. D'Angelo Russell wasn't the best from the field, but he gave them some offense. They got some players who contributed and really helped out. And I think that's what really created the upset tonight. The Rockets need to go back and look at themselves and be like, okay, what did we do wrong in this game? Now, again, this is early in the season, so you have these games. Like, this is one thing people forget. You have these types of games during an 82-game season. You will be upset by a team you have no business losing to. It happens. Things, if you're a great team, you don't let it happen again. I believe they played each other 4 times. I believe they beat them before this once. Is a great story for Warriors to win on Christmas Day with all the injuries and everything that's happened to them so far this season to beat the Houston Rockets. People are going to make memes about it saying, oh, here comes the Rockets. Still can't beat the Warriors, even without Clay, KD, and Steph. But this is just a great win for them, great team win for them. And don't worry, though. When the Warriors get back next year, you need to watch out for them. But the Rockets, they need to get back on track and just focus on the next game. I think they'll be fine. And then in the last game of Christmas, Pelicans and Nuggets. Pelicans win 112-100. Pelicans pretty much controlled this game from start to finish. Brandon Ingram had 31 points, continuing his excellent season. That's why he's in running for most improved player this year. He has been excellent this year for these guys. Very, very good for these guys. He has played extremely well. And he's one of the reasons why, they have a chance to when Zion gets back, to really be a good team next year. There's still some debate if Zion should sit out the entire year, but Brandon Ingram is someone who's definitely playing himself into a max contract. He's playing himself into, just showing that he was not the bust that people thought he was, and he showed it tonight. In this game, really, the Nuggets just really didn't have the juice today. I don't think they had the juice when I watched the game. They seemed like they were just kind of an autopilot, and the Pelicans wanted it more than them. They wanted it more from them. They went for the loose balls. They scrapped, and they just played well in all facets of the game. Usually Pelicans' weaknesses is defensive, and then tonight they played a pretty good defensive game. That's one of the weaknesses of this young team, and they play very well defensively. And then they've always been able to score. That's one of the things that the Pelicans have been good at, is scoring. And so them getting this win tonight really is big for them and moving forward. But coming up next, we're going to talk about some around the news, around the league notes. Victor Oladipo returning in February, Iggy being moved the deadline, and a strong concern against having the Final Four teams reseeded. Coming up right here.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about the Christmas Day games, my thoughts and opinions on each game results, and what it means for each team moving forward going into the future. Now we're going to get into some NBA talk around the league so far, coming out of Christmas, going into Christmas, and coming after Christmas. And one of the first stories I want to get into is Victor Oladipo. If you remember, Victor Oladipo suffered a torn quadricep last year, right before the playoffs, where the Indiana Pacers, I believe, were still the third seed in the Eastern Conference, having one of their best seasons. And this was a big loss because Victor Oladipo is their best player. Victor Oladipo has developed himself into one of the top players in the NBA. I believe, in my opinion, that he's actually underrated. A lot of people don't appreciate Victor Oladipo for what he does. I feel like Victor Oladipo has done a lot for the league, and he really, really hit his stride after he was traded from Oklahoma City to the Indiana Pacers, and really has become one of the better players in the game today. So basically, he's aiming for February as his return date. He's aiming for that day as the day he returns to the league and he plays basketball once again. And I think that's big news for the Indiana fans, because if you're going to have any chance to maybe make a run in the playoffs, he is your chance. Victor Oladipo, I think, is one of the most underrated players in the league. I feel like he's one of those players who does everything well. He does everything right. But I feel like he never gets the appreciation that a lot of other players get for the work they put in for their teams, because Victor Oladipo doesn't have that same star power, that same name power as Russell Westbrook's and James Harden's. But I do feel like he does a lot of things well. He can shoot, he can rebound, he's athletic, he can defend. I mean, he pushed LeBron James in his last year in Cleveland to 7 games. If a couple calls went in the other direction, you could have maybe said the Indiana Pacers would have won that series. And even the next year, they got to, I think, third, second seed in the Eastern Conference last year and before he got hurt. And people say that if he played the series against Boston, they would have beat Boston because the way those games played, even though Indiana got swept, if you just knew they just had that extra, that one player who give them that 18-20, they win. And then Victor Oladipo was that guy because remember, he is the best player on the team. And I think this is going to be big for him. I'm not saying that Indiana's going to make a deep playoff run this year, but they're a team that you have to watch out for. Victor Oladipo can get back to at least 90% of what he was last year and the previous years because he was one of those guys who really emerged in Indiana and then became one of the top players in Indiana. And Indiana really embraced him and loved him as a player. I mean, he's the guy who works hard for that city. He wants to bring Indiana a championship one day. Hopefully he can. Maybe get another big star in Indiana. Because, Indiana, you have to think about it. Indiana is a place that you don't really know to get big stars. The last big star they had was Paul George, and he wanted out because he wanted to go back to California, even though they traded him to Oklahoma City. And Oladipo really is one of those guys I think is hungry, and I think he's willing to put in the work to show everybody that he can come back from this quadricep injury and be even better than ever before. And I think that's what the Indiana Pacers are going to need from him because they're going to need him to really play at a very high level. They're going to need him to play at a level that, can get them over the top maybe in one game, maybe even one series, first round series maybe. So, that's the update on Victor Oladipo. Obviously, we're still wishing him a recovery. Hopefully he gets back, doesn't get hurt again. And, we hope we see the old Victor Oladipo from old times and that he's going to still play at that very high level that we expect him to play at when he gets back. And in other news, we have some trade news or some releasing news potentially. Andre Iguodala. Andre Iguodala was traded this offseason to the Memphis Grizzlies by the Golden State Warriors. And Iguodala was never going to play for the Memphis Grizzlies. They just picked up his contract for some picks from from the Warriors. And so he's been at home training while the season's been going on. But the Memphis Grizzlies are confident they will be able to trade him by the deadline. This is big because Andre Iguodala is very much wanted by title contenders. And he's been mainly connected to the Lakers and the Clippers. And I think that both of those teams could definitely use him. Iguodala is one of the better defenders in the NBA, even at his age, and can shoot three from here or there. Iguodala was a big part of the championship teams for the Warriors the last few years. Ever since their dynasty started, he was there. Everybody remembers that coaching change that Steve Kerr made in the 2015 finals against LeBron James when they were up 2-1. And he put Andre Iguodala into the lineup, and they won 3 straight and won the NBA Finals that year. And Iguodala has shown that he can adjust in any situation. He does not have to be the main guy, especially at his advanced age now. I think he's obviously more understanding, like, okay, I'm not going to be that guy. But he can definitely contribute, give you some great minutes. He can play defense and offense for you. Andre Iguodala is a guy who I think even there's a dark outside shot that the Houston Rockets can because Houston's also interested in him. And they feel like if they get him, honestly, all 3 teams, Houston, LA, both LA teams and Houston both feel like if they get Andre Iguodala, that will put them over the top. That will put them in where they want to be. He will put them in the spot where they feel like we're going into the finals. We have that one piece that's going to get us over the top because he's that perimeter defender that every team would want to have on their team. Houston obviously with Russell and Harden, maybe in that last lineup, they're using the 4 quarter late minutes. You got Iguodala out there, can guard their best player, and then you got Harden and Westbrook guarding the other guys. They have a good defensive unit on the floor. Same thing with Clippers. They're already a great perimeter defensive team. This is just going to make it even more unstoppable to score on them from the perimeter. And the Lakers feel like he's like that missing piece. He's that one player who adds that perimeter defense, but also can give him that 3-point shooter when LeBron drives the court and kicks it out to guys. So definitely a game that really shows a lot for Iguodala. I think Iguodala, the thing is what does Memphis want for Iguodala? That's something that's kind of been kind of iffy the whole year because obviously, they want him, but I mean, Iguodala is up there in age, so you can't ask too much of him. But you do want to ask him for some decent compensation because obviously Memphis is a rebuilding team. They want to feel like they're getting something that's going to benefit their rebuilding process going into the future. So that's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. It'll be interesting where Andre Iguodala ends up. Andre Iguodala can end up in the 3 teams I've mentioned. Maybe there's a dark horse team that we're not even speaking about right now that he can end up at. And, thing is also, who does Andre Iguodala want to play for? I mean, it's been reported he wants to play for both LA teams. So I feel like he feels like if he's just traded to one of those teams, he'll be absolutely fine with whoever he plays with, and he'll be very satisfied with whatever is given to him. And, like I said, at this point in his career, I'm pretty sure he's not being too picky about anything. So, good for Andre Iguodala. We'll have to see who ends up getting him and who ends up adding him to that playoff push. In the last news, there has been some concern and some backlash about the new proposed NBA league rules coming up in this next CBA agreement. Dallas owner Mark Cuban came out talking about the midseason tourney, talking about how he feels like it's not really a good idea, because he's like, think about the teams who are chasing championships. Usually teams who chase championships don't have cap space. They're over the cap. They're already in luxury tax. And that draft pick technically will not help the situation. They really can't take the draft pick. And so he's like, well, what are the teams going to do? Are you going to dump it? Are you going to trade it? Are you going to slash it? Like, what are we going to do? And also he talked about good teams might tank, because it's like, this tournament does nothing for us. This is not going to benefit us. We don't care about a draft pick. We're winning now. So what's the point of having, this draft pick? And so basically he brought up the concern of, well, what's the point of us having a draft pick really? And I think it's a good point to ask, because you got to think about the teams who are trying to win a championship. It don't mean anything. The teams that aren't going anywhere that year, that's going to mean much more to them than it is to the championship team. So he was just bringing up the concern with what would that do? What would that help with? What could that possibly do for, them, And it's a good point. And also there's also concern with the 4 seeds at the end of it, because they're reseeding the last 4 seeds, where basically they're supposed to have play-in tourneys at the end of the year for those last 4 seeds, but they're also about reseeding them. And some people think there may be a concern that the Eastern Conference will not have a lot of teams that make it into the tourney. Some people have some strong concerns about that, because one thing about it, I think, is that they want things to be even. They want things to be balanced between the two. And they don't want this reseeding to keep an Eastern Conference team from having a better chance or a good chance or a good seeding in this role. I think, because they don't want, like I said, an NBA league imbalance. That's one thing that I think that's the reason why they're doing all these rule changes, is that they feel like it's going to add more excitement to the league. They feel like it's going to eliminate load management. They feel like it's going to add urgency. And that's why I think they're making all the rule changes they've been making, because they really believe that this is going to benefit the league. But obviously with changes, there's going to be some pushback, because not everybody is comfortable with it. Not everybody is sure. There's honestly, I always say this, there's probably holes in anything. But the question is, how big are those holes? Are the holes really that big that's going to hurt the league, where it's going to hurt them in the pocketbooks and ratings, or is it going to help the league? And that's something I think when the CBA comes up, they're going to have to discuss how is this going to help the league, because this is going to be very big for them coming soon. But coming up next, we're going to talk about Kawhi Leonard. Came out this past week that Uncle Dennis, in some negotiations with teams, talked about what he wanted to get Kawhi Leonard to play for their team. And we're also going to detail LeBron and Kawhi's relationship, as there was an article that came out about it this past week too. Coming up.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered. Listen. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about some news and notes around the league. We talked about Andre Iguodala coming up for the trade deadline. We also talked about how the old Victor Oladipo camp is expecting Victor Oladipo back by at least February, and also talking about some concerns with the new league rules that have been brought up by owners like Mark Cuban, and also just around the league, the concerns with reseeding the four final seeds. So that was some news and notes around the league. Now we're going to get into some news and stories about Kawhi Leonard. Now, this past week, there was a story that was written on Bleacher Report and posted on many other sites talking about the free agency process of courting Kawhi Leonard and what Uncle Dennis had asked teams to give them if they wanted Kawhi. This list included partial ownership share, private plane access, a house, a guaranteed amount of endorsement money to secure his commitment. And all these requests would have violated the NBA's collective bargaining agreement and was thus denied by the Lakers. The 76ers also said they were asked for this. And the other team, which I cannot think of right now, who also was asked, actually I do, the Toronto Raptors. The Toronto Raptors were asked, and they were basically asked for all of these things, which is again against CBA. And it's crazy because you don't hear the Clippers saying it, and they got the guy. So that's a little suspicious, but that's what was said. That's what was put in this article. And this was investigated by the league and Adam Silver to make sure there was nothing illegal going on here. They couldn't find anything, so basically they're in the clear. This is obviously a big story because if you remember what happened this past offseason in free agency, Kawhi Leonard was the big free agent. Kawhi Leonard had got his way out of San Antonio, was traded to Toronto, won a championship to Toronto, but was going to still be a free agent. He always had wanted to go back to California. And, he was a very sought-after free agent. So when this happened, if you remember what happened, everybody believed that the Lakers were going to get Kawhi Leonard. Everybody thought that Kawhi was going to pick the Lakers and he was going to go play with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. But then in the wee hours of the morning, he picked the Clippers and Paul George was traded to the Clippers. And this was shocking in NBA league circles and around the NBA. And I think that this is a very interesting story to come out because if he was asking for all of this, it sounds like this makes Uncle Dennis look bad more than Kawhi because Uncle Dennis is basically the guy who controls he's almost his agent. And so if he's asking for unrealistic demands, it sounds like to me that they may have already knew they wanted to go to the Clippers and they just wanted to throw those things at other teams to basically in a way say, we don't really want to come here, but if somehow, some way, maybe under the table you could get us these things, we'll come. Basically, do something for us and we'll come. But the Clippers, they just were like, hey, get Paul George by any means necessary and I'll sign you. And that's what the Clippers went ahead and did. And, a lot of people wonder if maybe this is another reason why he duped, in some people's opinions, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard. And a lot of people wonder, what does this mean long term in terms of maybe dealings with players? Because obviously, if this is true, this wouldn't, again, be a good outlook and a good view on Mr. Uncle Dennis. Kawhi publicly acknowledged that he had no knowledge of it. He was unaware that this was happening, and he has nothing to do with it. Because I honestly really sit here and I think to myself, and I'm like I said, this could all have been a power play just to get Kawhi on the Clippers. Like the goal from the minute he left was to go to the Clippers. But I do truly believe he was open to going back to Toronto. I don't feel like it was a close, like I'll never come back here. I mean, this is a team he just won a championship with. They did everything they wanted him to. He wanted them to do the previous year, and so he has no reason to have any ill feelings towards them or have any reason not to come back. It's just at the end of the day, he's one of those guys who just came off and was just like, well, I want to go back to LA. I want to play for LA, but I don't want to play for LeBron James, and I don't want to play with LeBron James. And I think that's one of the reasons why he also probably preferred the Clippers. I mean, remember, he was connected to the Clippers for a while now because a lot of people feel like that was the team he was going to go to. And he ended up going to that team, which now is why they're a powerhouse in the Western Conference and predicted to win the NBA Finals by a lot of people, competing with LeBron James and the Lakers for that position and for that top spot. Now, speaking of LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard, there was also another article posted this week that kind of detailed their relationship a little more. It detailed kind of how they view each other. Now, they both respect each other as players. They both understand that both players are superstars, that both players are one of the best at their positions, which they both play the same position. But, they feel like they're the best player. And there's some people that have came out, like an anonymous GM saying, I think LeBron knows Kawhi is coming and that he can take it. Basically saying he feels like LeBron knows that Kawhi can be the best player. He knows that he can be the top guy. And there was a couple other guys that played with him in San Antonio that were like, well, every time LeBron came to town, you could sense a difference in Kawhi. It seemed like Kawhi really wanted to play well in those games. So that's why some people were saying that maybe there was some rivalry going on here between the two players. It's a rivalry that's not spoken of, but it's known between the two. Where, KD and LeBron were very outspoken. Yeah, we're rivals, but we're also going to practice together. Kobe and LeBron clearly were rivals, in terms of who was the best player in the league. You had those types of debates with those players. This has been more of a quiet. Now, some people feel like this started from the 2014 NBA Finals, where Kawhi had won the NBA Finals with the big three of the Spurs, Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, and Tony Parker, and had won Finals MVP. Now, some people don't believe that was the start of it because they feel like, well, it was the big three and then Kawhi Leonard, so you can't really say that, that was the guy who LeBron was really rivaling with. Because the thing about it is, I think a lot of people say it because Kawhi is credited in that series for locking down, so to say, LeBron James, even though he averaged 28 points in that series. But basically, his defensive work on LeBron was very good, and he made life difficult for LeBron James in that finals. And I think that to me, if they have a rivalry, the rivalry started this year because they live in the same city, they play in the same arena, and they're competing for the same things. And so in that situation, then you could say, oh yeah, they're rivals now. Now, in terms of LeBron knowing, I'm sure LeBron knows that Kawhi is up and coming. He's one of the best players in the league. And I mean, remember last year, we weren't even saying that until Kawhi won the championship because we were still saying Durant was potentially the best player in the league. And now he's out for a year. Now we're like, oh, Kawhi Leonard. Even though LeBron James has had a resurgent season this year and has played one of his best seasons even at the age of 35. And, it's one of those things where, you kind of look at these types of games and, you're just like, well, if you think about it realistically, Kawhi is younger. He's like 28. LeBron is like 35. Can it really be a rivalry? I mean, we don't know how many more years LeBron is going to play. We think he'll be in the league around for another few years, and we think he has another top superstar years for another 2-3 years. Kawhi, we may think he may be here for another decade. And so he may have maybe another 8 years, maybe another 9 years. Okay, I ain't going to say that much. I'll say 6 or 5, too. And we think that Kawhi is going to be around and being a top guy. Because once LeBron retires, who are we going to say? We're going to say Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard. So I think if it is a rivalry, it became a rivalry this year. It was not a rivalry in previous years. But I do feel like LeBron probably saw Kawhi from a distance, was like, okay, this guy, he's going to come for that. He's going to come for the mantle of the best, the face. And Kawhi, the reason why he's so appealing to people is he's not the normal face of a league. He's not the normal outspoken guy. He's not like a Russell Westbrook outgoing personality. His robotic personality is why he's so loved by people. And he's a very quiet individual. And so again, if this is a rivalry, it'll never be spoken. It'll never be like, hey, yeah, this is my rival. Yeah, I want to be better than him. Now, Kawhi may say it one day in some sit-down interview or maybe after he retires, but right now he's not going to say that. And everything that we do right now, if we say this is a rivalry, is mainly media talk. It's mainly media talk. This is what we mainly talk about. Because, that's why sometimes they say media creates rivalries, not the players. Media wants two people to go head-to-head against each other so bad that they'll try to use anything and anything to say, oh, yeah, they're going head-to-head against each other. They're trying to be better than each other. This is clearly a rivalry. They're trying to show that they're better than one another. But at the same time, you always understand every NBA player is trying to show they're better than everybody. Every NBA player wants to be the best. So you can't just necessarily say that now because they're in the same city now. Oh, they're trying to prove it now to each other when they might have been trying to prove it for 3 years, but they may have never been trying to prove it at all. But coming up next, we're going to switch over to college basketball, talk about some big games in college basketball this weekend and my predictions.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Now we're going to switch to some college basketball here, and we're going to talk about some of the big games and some of the my predictions for the games. Also, we're going to talk about the latest net rankings. If you missed last segment, we talked about Kawhi Leonard and Uncle Dennis and what they asked for this past offseason when Kawhi Leonard was a free agent, with also the surrounding rivalry the media has kind of created between him and LeBron James. So now we're about to get into some college basketball. Now, obviously, since it's the holidays, the games there aren't as many maybe, but there's still some good games on slate, and we're about to talk about them right here. On Saturday, they have a big game in the Battle of Kentucky. I like to call it the Battle of the State of Kentucky, which is Kentucky versus Louisville. Kentucky is 8-3, 19th in the nation. Louisville is 3rd in the nation, 11-1. It's on CBS at 3:45. This is obviously one of the biggest games of the year for this. This is obviously a most anticipated game. These teams are always competing for national championship every year. So this is a game where both teams this is like a good measuring stick for both teams to see where they are, to see how good each other's is. Obviously, Kentucky's lost 3 games this year. They've lost to a lot of good teams. And if they lose again, there's not a good team. But then it makes you wonder, can they beat the good teams? They'll be 8-4, which is not the most greatest record in the world, but they've lost to good teams. Louisville's just trying to stay on the path. First year without Rick Pitino and still 11-1 and 3rd in the AP poll. So that's a game to look forward to. I'm gonna take Louisville in this game to win this game. I think this is going to be a highly competitive game, and I think that both teams are going to come out there and just give it all in court. It's going to be in Kentucky, though. It's going to be in Lexington, so that's going to be an interesting atmosphere. And now we're going into some other games. We have West Virginia, Ohio State. Good old Press Virginia is going to be playing Ohio State on Sunday at 12. Ohio State's the number 2 team in the nation, 11-1. West Virginia is 10-1, and this is going to be also another highly anticipated game. This game is going to have a lot of implications on the tournament. Obviously, West Virginia has won a lot of games, not against the most greatest competition, but they've won some games. Ohio State's won some games. Like I said, the only game they lost was the upset in Minnesota. And I think I'm going to go ahead and take Ohio State in this game, win this game. I think this is at Ohio State. I think they're going to pick up the victory and continue on with their season. And then one of the last games that I feel like is intriguing from this past weekend is Kansas and Stanford. Stanford is 11-1 right now. They're unranked, but they're 11-1. So this is one of those games where you don't want to sleep on this team. Kansas is 9-2. They're 5th in the nation, but they're going to Kansas. It's going to be on ABC. They're going to Stanford. It's going to be on ABC. So you definitely want to look out for that game. It's a national primetime game. So this is a big chance for Stanford to show the nation that they're for real and that they deserve to be heavily considered. Right now, this is going to improve their tournament resume and also probably crack the AP poll if they win this game. So this is a big game for Kansas going forward. Kansas is one of the best teams, I think, in the nation. And I think that this is a game for them also to make a statement and show, like, this is why we're one of the best teams in the nation. And we're not a team to be playing with and all of that good stuff. Now, if you want to go into further games, maybe Monday, December 30th, Villanova. They're playing Xavier. Xavier is a very good team, 11-2. They're always one of those teams again. St. John's, Xavier. Those teams are always good every year. Not ranked, but they're 11-2. Another big game. If they beat Villanova, they'll probably crack the AP poll and also improve their resume for the tournament. Both teams have only lost 2 games this year, but I'm going to go with Villanova in this game. I think Illinois is going to win the game, and I think they're going to go out here and continue to show where they're going to be maybe a top 4 seed in the tournament when it comes around, in my opinion. I think that that's going to be very interesting coming into the situation that Villanova is in. But I think it's going to be a great game. So now we're going to switch over to the net rankings, the latest updated net rankings. These is 2 games through December 25th, which was yesterday. And yesterday, the new number 1 is San Diego State, 11-0. San Diego State is a surprising team, but based off these rankings, they've been the most impressive team. They have won 3 on the road, 3 neutral, and 5 at home. They've beaten every team that's been placed in front of them, and that's all you can ask for. This is a team that if they continue to win, they might move up the ranks. They might be able to get a higher seed in the tournament. And just, right now the net rankings say they have the most impressive resume in terms of all the metrics and statistics that the net rankings compile together to make this list. Number 2 is Ohio State. Ohio State last week was, not just last week, yesterday or a couple of days ago was 2. Now they're still 2. They were still 11-1. Like I said, they lost that one game on the road to Minnesota, but they also look like the most impressive team in the resume, and also in the country. I think that this team has a lot of things working well for them. I think this team is a team that, again, is a team when it gets to the tournament, do not be surprised to see them in the Final Four. They're one of the best coach teams in the nation also. So Ohio State's definitely coming out here competing at a very high level every game to win because they want to be recognized as the best team in the Big Ten, as they're the top-rated team right now in the net rankings in the Big Ten. Third is Butler. Obviously, I've told y'all about Butler. Butler is a team, they've only lost one game all year. And they beat some really good teams this year. And they're a team that looks like from the Big East that's going to be a team to be reckoned with. Previously, they were 4, now they're 3. So they moved up a spot. If they continue on this path, they might jump Ohio State depending on how the metrics see it. They have a really good team. And you definitely want to look out for Butler because Butler is one of those teams that definitely can come out there and beat you on any given day. And they're a team that, hey, remember, never forget those years with Brad Stevens and Gordon Hayward and Shelley Mack where they made it to the tournament 2 years in a row and almost beat 2 powerhouses. And then this Butler team reminds me of those teams. So don't be surprised if that happens. Kansas is 4th. They were 6th previously, now they're 4th. This is just, obviously after losing that game, losing that game when they were number 1, they had dropped down a little bit, but they've won some games since then, impressive wins. Obviously, the Metros would like him. They like him a lot. They think, okay, they're one of the better teams in the nation, so that's why they moved him up, and that's why they're going to continue to move up into the long run. And I think the team's going to look good going into a lot of situations going into the future, especially since we are about to enter conference play. Because we're about to enter conference play, you're really about to see how good these teams are going against same teams every week. Big 12 is one of the better conferences, so they're having to play a lot of good teams twice. And it's going to be interesting to see where Kansas ends up. Gonzaga is number 5. Last week they were 3, but I remember they lost their game. They lost. And, this is a big game for Gonzaga coming up this weekend and just in previous weeks, just in terms of just continuing to win, especially since they became the new number 1. And just you're number 1 in the AP poll. You're in the top 5 in the net rankings. Gonzaga is going to have an impressive resume at the end of the year. Like I said, when they hit conference play, they just can't lose any of those games because those are going to be big hits for their resume. Because a lot of those games, unless it's a very good team within the conference they lose to, is going to be considered a bad loss, which will hurt their resume when going into March time and March Madness. 6 is Baylor. Baylor was 5. They dropped to 6. Gonzaga jumped them. Obviously, they're the second highest rated Big 12 team. That Kansas-Baylor matchup will be highly anticipated when they play. Some people may consider them the 2 best teams in the Big 12. And I think that this game's going to come down to just, who's going to play better defense at the end of the day. But Baylor is one of the better defensive teams in the nation, and they have some good scoring on the wing. And I think they're a team that definitely can come out there and play with anybody, like I said, and win in any given day. And I think they definitely deserve being number 6. Number 7, Louisville, same previously with 7. They've just been pretty steady. Ever since that loss, they've been steady. They have a big matchup coming up this weekend against Kentucky, so if they win that game, they'll probably move up. You would think with that quality win, but we'll have to see. They're moving up or moving down because, Kentucky's a team that's going to change it, and it could bring Kentucky up, So it's one of those things where we'll have to see what happens when it comes to that because Kentucky on the net rankings is actually ranked 72. So far the committee or the net rankings are not very impressed with Kentucky's, overall season so far. So that's why they need this game. But also Louisville wants this game just to continue to show dominance and to show they're the best team in Kentucky. Number 8 is Auburn. Auburn, again, undefeated. They're one of the only 2 undefeated teams in the top 10 of the net rankings. They're just impressive. Auburn just has slowly became a basketball power. Bruce Pearl has done a great job there at that program, and Auburn is a team to be reckoned with coming in the future years to come and this year. And remember, they're basically the highest ranked SEC team. Like they're 8th, they're highest ranked. So right now they say they're the best SEC team in the nation, best on these rankings. Number 9, Duke. Duke's always gonna be a powerhouse. They're always gonna be good every year. They're gonna be there. They're gonna be competing every time, competing with the best teams, and they're just gonna do what they do out there because they're just trying to win. And Krzyzewski's gonna get those guys ready to go again. Like I said, hitting conference play. Obviously, we look forward to those games with North Carolina. Obviously, those will be national primetime games. So, Duke right now, just steady team. And rounding out the top 10, West Virginia, Press Virginia. Obviously, like I said, they have a big game this weekend. And, they're rounding out the top 10. They're a very steady team. And, they're one of the best defensive teams in the nation. Like I said, the reason why they're calling Press Virginia. They are great on-ball defenders. They're one of the few teams that are not scared to go man-to-man in college basketball. So that's why you got to watch out for West Virginia. Coming up next, I'm going to give you my 2010s All-Decades team in the NBA from the past century. Stay tuned.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we talked about some college basketball scores and some big games coming up this next coming weekend and my predictions on those big games. So if you love you some college basketball, definitely listen to that segment. And now we're going to go into something fun. A lot of places, a lot of shows, a lot of sports programming has done it recently. We're going to talk about, to me, the top players, or my top starting 5 players of the 2010s, since this decade's about to come to an end. A lot of people are doing a lot of top 100, a lot of top 150. Some have done top 10. I'm going to do my starting lineup for the 2010s. And I'm going to tell y'all why I pick every player I pick. And why I feel like that this is the best selection that I personally feel like should come out of this decade, coming into this new decade. So at point guard, I'm going to go with Steph Curry. The reason why I'm going with Steph Curry, I think, is pretty obvious. Steph Curry revolutionized the game. The three-point shot was revolutionized because of Steph Curry. Steph Curry really changed the narrative. He was a guy who was small. A lot of people worried about smaller point guards because, he's a smaller point guard. How was he going to do against bigger guys? Well, Curry basically was like, okay, well, yeah, if I go into the paint, y'all might be able to bully me. But if I shoot the 3 and I shoot it efficiently, y'all can't do anything. Especially since the rules have changed now where you really can't touch the shooter. And Steph Curry took advantage of that. Steph Curry broke into the league and has really dominated. Especially when the dynasty started in Golden State, he really came out and just played excellent. I mean, remember, he won a unanimous MVP. Nobody's ever done that, not even Jordan. So clearly, Steph Curry changed the game. He's one of the greatest three-point shooters, and a lot of people consider him the greatest three-point shooter to ever live. And I can see why. He's done so well. He's also very underrated on defense. Now, yes, he's not the greatest on-ball defender, but he's also very sneaky. He can get you a lot of steals. He can get you some turnovers and make some plays for you. You shouldn't sleep on Steph Curry. Steph Curry, I remember when he also reached his pinnacle of fame. Remember, everybody loved Steph Curry. Everybody did. Everybody was in love with his family, him, And obviously when you keep winning, you're going to start kind of being a little hated. And also some of the final hiccups he's had. But, Steph Curry would definitely be my point guard of the 2010s. He'd be my starting point. And I feel definitely very confident in that pick. Now, at shooting guard, it was a tough one. There isn't really as many great shooting guards in the league during the 2010s. you really had your three guys, really, in my opinion, that you really could select for this, in my opinion, which was Klay Thompson, Bradley Beal, and Dwayne Wade. And I'm going to go with Dwayne Wade because Dwayne Wade, he's a guy who, he's one of the best players to ever play this game at the shooting guard position. Some people consider him the second best shooting guard behind Kobe and Jordan. He was one of the best blocking shooting guards to ever play this game. Remember, he obviously part of that dynasty with LeBron James and the Heat winning those 2 championships. He's a guy who I feel like Dwayne Wade is just one of the best guys to ever play this game. And he's one of the best shooting guards. They called him Flash for a reason. Like the way he moved was so quick and so agile. He was so gifted offensively. And the thing about Dwayne is he was never an elite 3-point shooter. Even when the game started slowly shifting, he never had to be a 3-point shooter to really be, relevant. Now, when Dwayne Wade got hot, now he could get hot from 3. Now, when Dwayne Wade got hot, you better watch out. Dwayne Wade got hot. But he never was a 3-point shooter. He was a guy who was great in the mid-range and could get to the paint. And that's how he made his living. That's how he made that work. And he was one of the best players to do it. He really, really showed out. He really played very well. He's going to be a future Hall of Famer. He just retired about, 2 years ago? Last year. Sorry about that. And it's crazy because a lot of people wondered, man, what if Dwayne Wade played with Jimmy Butler this year? What would Miami be? Miami's already good. What if he played with him? But, Dwayne Wade, he's one of the best shooting guards of my generation since I've been alive with Kobe. So, he definitely, I feel like, deserved this spot. Klay Thompson was definitely a close second because Klay's also considered one of the second greatest shooter ever lived. But I'm going to go with Dwayne Wade as the spot. Now, my next 3 and 4, I'm just going to do forwards. So it's not small in power, like forwards. My first forward I go with is LeBron James. Clearly because LeBron James, in a lot of people's eyes, is considered the second best player in NBA history. He went to 8 straight finals. He does everything. He has the assisting and the vision of magic. And he's bigger than everybody else. He can get to the paint. He's improved his jump shot. He's improved his 3-point shot. LeBron James is one of the best players of this generation. Remember, he probably would have made my team in the 2000s. LeBron James has been great for a long time, going into his 17th year, 35 years old, still at the top of his game. And that's why he makes this list. You cannot not have LeBron on this list. If LeBron stays strong going into the 2020s, he might be able to crack the 2020 list. And he's going, we pretty much know he'll probably retire during the 2020s, but he might still crack that list. If he was able to keep playing at this level longer, like in a long-term situation. LeBron James, he's someone who's been under a lot of scrutiny. He was judged when he made the decision. A lot of people resented LeBron because of the fact that, that Jordan comparison. You're compared to Jordan, there's going to be some resentment there. Because a lot of people just refuse to take Jordan off that mantle. And, it doesn't matter what your opinion is. You cannot disappreciate what LeBron has done for the league and how great of a player he's been. Because LeBron's been one of the most consistent players since he's entered the league, coming right out of high school in 04, 03. So LeBron James would be my third player on my starting 5 for the 2010 All-Decades team. Now, under my fourth, I'm going to go with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is one of the best players to ever play this game. Also, he is a freak of nature. He is literally 7 feet tall, 7'3" wingspan, and can move just like a guard. He is a matchup nightmare because of his ability on the offensive end. And he's improved as a defender. Now, a lot of people are going to judge Durant because of the decision to go to Golden State, but you can't deny what Durant is. Durant is one of the best players. A lot of people considered after last year, or before last year, LeBron was second and Durant was first because Kevin Durant had made such strides as a player while he was in Golden State. And, Kevin Durant, to me, he is literally one of the complete players in this game. And he's going to be a Hall of Famer too one day. He's won 2 championships and he's a guy who, again, just how can you guard him? Really, how can you guard him? It's going to be very difficult because his release point on his jump shot is also very unblockable. Like, it's almost like that KG jump shot so high up. How can you really affect the shot? And that's how Kevin Durant is. Kevin Durant is one of the best players to ever play this game because of that, because of his freak of nature ability and his frame. And Kevin Durant is one of the best players to ever step foot on an NBA basketball court, in my opinion. Now, we don't know where he'll end up all the time when the season's or when his career's said and done, but I think he'll definitely be up there. And now we're going to go to the fifth. Now, obviously in the 2010s, the center position has kind of weathered off a little bit, so it's really hard to kind of say who is the best center. Because you really don't have an elite. Because if you had to go with that, to be honest, based on what's happened in 2010, I mean, you kind of have to go with a guy like Joel Embiid. I mean, like, really legitimate, because there's no legitimate centers. Maybe Boogie. But I'm going to go with a guy who's played center, but is a 4 by natural for my all-decade team. And I'm going to go with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis, to me, again, is like a top 5 player in the game now. And, you know, he's unstoppable, literally, because he can take you into the paint. He can get you in the post. He can shoot the 3. I mean, he's a freak of nature on the defensive end. Anthony Davis is one of the best players to ever step foot on an NBA basketball court during this generation. And, you know, he's still building his legacy. He's still building it. But he's been dominant since he came out of Kentucky. Remember, he never always played in the 4. He sometimes had to play the 5, and that's why I'm putting him in this position. You know, if Embiid was doing this maybe 2013 to now, I'd probably put Embiid here, but I'm going to go Anthony Davis, because Anthony Davis has played like one of the best players in the NBA. He really has. He has shown everybody that he is one of the best players to step foot in the league. And he deserves all the credit and praises he got. That's all for me. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. And also, if you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, thank you and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.